So Jeff Hurst, the Trevor Brooking and Billy Bonds, Paolo Di Canio, West Ham United. We celebrate our victories, we stick together in defeat. Proud of our history, West Ham United, more than just a podcast, more than just a podcast.
Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening. This is going to be a bit of a somber podcast, and it's a special episode with a bit of a tribute to David Gold. And we heard the sad news on Wednesday, 4th of January, that sadly he'd passed away. When we recorded on Monday, I did share with the other presenters that, you know, he was in hospital and it wasn't looking too good. So he's been struggling with illness for quite a while. During the pandemic, he caught COVID a number of times. He'd been through bouts of pneumonia. He hadn't been to a lot of games recently, as a lot of people had realised, and you know, obviously there were pictures of him looking frail. But you know, even towards the end, he was positive. Just a month ago, he was saying, you know, I'm not ready to give up yet. I'm going to fight this. I'm going to be back. But unfortunately, we received the sad news that you know, he lost his battle, and he died on Wednesday, aged 86. I personally first met David Gold in 2011, actually along with Nigel, the first SAB, the Supporters Advisory Board, and in the various revisions, obviously David came to a number of those and met supporters. He always had time for people, always had time for fans, and would talk. And again, we met him. Nigel and myself went to one of his famous talks where he told his old stories, as he often did. And you know, through a number of meetings, I wasn't his friend, but we became acquaintances, and I knew I had his mobile number, I had his email address, and you could always WhatsApp him and he would answer, or you could email him. But he loved to talk. You know, there was no better thing than to ring him up and he would chat forever. Often not the things you want to talk to him about. He just liked to talk about West Ham. And you know, if we sort of fast forward to 2015, you know, I asked him to do an interview for this podcast, and he agreed. And you're going to hear it in a minute. I thought my tribute to David Gold would be playing that 50-minute interview, raw and uncut, as recorded in 2015, 8 years ago, because you can hear David Gold, the person, the passion about West Ham. And you know, I spoke to him after that, and I visited his house once on an open day, and we spoke again there, and we friends of ours hired a box in 2019, and I think it was a game against Leicester, and again David came in with his brother Ralph, and again the Americans who were hosting us got to meet him, and you know, he would always give his time. He'd always make people feel at ease, and would always tell his most famous stories. You know, and we will miss him. You know, a lot. I think he got some unnecessary grief. His heart was in the right place. He loved West Ham, no matter what anyone says. He obviously played for West Ham as a cult, as a youth, and I think my personal view is his legacy will go on. I've met only once Vanessa and Jacqueline, and I know that Jacqueline's husband Zan Cunningham is now on the board, and I believe that he's a passionate West Ham fan, I'm told, and he's a succession plan to take over the family affairs for the Gold family, and I believe that they will retain a shareholding. I'm not going to tell you they're going to retain all of the 25%, but I think Um, David said a number of times that he wanted his legacy to hand his shares on to his daughters, and I'm hoping, that will be respected, and they will continue on that tradition for their father and stay somehow connected to West Ham. We'll see. It's very early days at the moment. But anyway, I just wanted my tribute to David Gold, rest in peace, is this interview that I recorded with him in 2015. So just put yourself in 2015 to put it in a little context.
And we welcome to More Than Just a Podcast. He played for the West Ham Colts for 4 years as an outside left between 1950 and 1954. He freely admits he used to bunk into the bowling grounds without paying as a youngster. He's now the joint owner of West Ham for the last 5 years. He bought it when he was 73 years young. It's David Gold, or better known as DG. Welcome, Mr. Chairman.
Oh, thank you very much, Sean. It's good to be on your programme.
It must seem a lifetime ago that you were playing for the West Ham boys. Any regrets for not being able to make it as a professional footballer?
Well, sure, we all have regrets. There's hardly a person that you meet that didn't think that at one time they might be a professional footballer. Sadly, that didn't happen. For a moment, I thought I was good enough, but a number of things got in its way. I suppose the most important thing that got in the way was the fact that I had to make a living at that time, and being offered professional terms. I think it was 30 shillings a week. Well, I could earn, £3 by going to work. So that was an issue as well. But having said that, had the opportunity come along, I'm sure I would have grasped it.
Yeah, you pay your footballers a little bit more than that nowadays.
Yes, they do, don't they? Well, that's the big difference. We played it for the love of the game. It didn't occur to us that it was a way of making a living. It just was something that we desperately wanted to do.
All right. Well, let's start with everything up to date. First of all, congratulations. I was there yesterday at Selhurst Park, which I know you were at as well. I'm still suffering a little bit today, I must admit. It was a great day, great celebrations afterwards. And obviously it comes on the back of amazing Liverpool win, a Man City win, obviously that Arsenal win beginning day of the season. And again against Palace, who were fourth, and we're now fourth. So I guess my first thing is, do you feel relieved and vindicated that you made the right choice in Slaven Bilic now?
Oh yes, I think we knew his CV before we even met him, so we knew that he was capable. Indeed, as some of the other applicants, their CVs. The issue is, are you going to be able to work with this man? Whether whoever you're interviewing, can you work with him? Is the chemistry between you? And that's not just like a lot of clubs. Really, it's just one man that would be dealing with the manager. In our case, of course, there's two chairmen and of course, Vice Chairman Karen Brady. Now, all of these people have to sort of tick the box. Yes, I can work with him. And there's no doubt of a number of other people that we interviewed. There were doubts. I'm not sure about this person. I'm not sure about the quality of the English. Where the English is very, very bad, and you're having to use interpreters. That doesn't tick the box. Well, with Slaven, not only did the English tick the box, but the chemistry tick the box, and there was another box to be ticked, of course, and that was that nobody else could do, and that was that he was an ex-player, and therefore, ex-players are always more warmly received by the fan base. So we could argue
certainly
that,
seems to be, yeah. He certainly seems to be warmly supported by the fans. Unlike the previous manager, it was a bit Marmite. Either people loved him or hated him. Well, hate is probably a bit of a strong word, but certainly everyone seems to be on Slaven's side at the moment and singing his name. And it's great to see all the West Ham fans united at the moment.
It does help when you're winning, of course. I mean, there's no question that the key to all of these things, particularly in the early stages, is to get off to a good start. Show passion. West Ham fans, they know that they don't have a divine right to win every game, but what they do have a divine right to expect, and that is that their football team is going to give 100%, and they're going to see passion from their manager, and that's what they've got. That's why they're. And so when there is a downside, and there's bound to be a downturn, you don't, nobody wins all of the time, and we've proved that. We didn't beat Bournemouth. The bookies had us like 10 to 1 to win, or that there was 10 to 1 on, or I should say 10 to 1 against Bournemouth winning, and yet they won, and yet the fans took it on the chin, knew that it was a bad day at the office, but they saw passion, they saw the passion of the manager, and they saw us bounce back and win our next away game. So it bodes well for the new manager, that they will tolerate a downward side because of all the good qualities that he has.
Yeah, I mean, he looked quite emotional when I got back to watch Match of the Day last night. It almost seemed quite emotional, in tears. He seems really passionate about this.
Oh, he is. I mean, I see him after the game, and you saw it. You saw it after the Crystal Palace side, after the Crystal Palace match. You saw literally a manager kissing one of his players. Well, that is that's the visual side of his the sheer delight of winning away from home again, and he shows his emotion. He can't help himself. He's an emotional, passionate man that is desperate to win.
Yeah. He said, I saw in an interview, he said that he's got no real target from the board. Is that right? He's got no target, beyond probably staying in the Premier League. There's no target to finish a particular league position for Slaven?
No, I mean, he wasn't given a target. Nobody said, we want you to finish 15th or whatever it might be. But he made it absolutely clear that, our initial requirement, because of the importance of the 2 years that he was going to share with us, those 2 years being the last year at the Bowling Ground, and the second year was going to be the first year at the new stadium. So it was absolutely vital. I mean, you can't imagine, can you, what it would be to get relegated in your last season at your which has been the home of West Ham for over 100 years. It would be unthinkable. And then to go to the Olympic Stadium in the Championship would be unthinkable. So he knew, and we expressed, our concern and our requirement to be a Premier League football club, which meant the bottom line, it came down to the fact, do not get relegated. It was straightforward. But, equally, we knew that the players that we'd already was looking at even before, because, it was, we were looking at players even before Slaven arrived, and Slaven approved of a number of players. And then, of course, there were players that he wanted to bring in. Now, all of these players, and it's very unusual, there was hardly a player that Slaven wanted, that David Sullivan, who our people that seek out players, every single player that he wanted, we actually got, which was remarkable. In 25 years of being in football, I've never known a window where we've managed. And of course, I'm sorry, I'm jumping from one thing to another. But in 25 years, I've never known that we've had a list of targets and got them all. I mean, many of them fall by the wayside. But in this instance, we with particularly with David Sullivan's persistence, we pulled off a remarkable window, and we got everybody that we went after. So Slaven couldn't have asked for more support. He got fantastic support from us financially, and the fact that we pursued to get our people or get the players in that he wanted.
Last question on league position. Where do you think we can finish? Put your optimistic hat on. Personally, you, not the board. Where do you think we can finish realistically?
Well, I'm sitting here right now, and I just for a moment, I am a fan, and therefore, I'm optimistic. Fans in the main are optimistic. Their expectation levels have risen. They've risen because they've seen some quality players. They didn't know what Lanzini was going to be like. They didn't know. They heard of him or they looked him up, but they didn't know what he was going to be and how he would fit in. They didn't know how Payet was going to settle in and become, the player that we saw at Crystal Palace. So a lot of these players coming in, they really didn't know what extra they were going to give to the team, and they've slotted in amazingly. And a Bonner and Pedro, all of these players are fit in so well that now fans are going to be saying, do you know what, we could finish in the top six. That's what they're saying.
Do you think we can finish in the top six, though?
Yeah, I do.
In your fan mode?
In my fan mode, and I must say, even in my director's mode, I would be saying that this side is good enough. I mean, let's be honest. We are not, as we speak, a top four football club. Top four football club has internationals right the way through the squad. The key for us will be how fortunate are we going to be through the season with injuries. Now, at the moment, we've got Song. Alex Song is injured, but due back any moment. Yeah. Could be on the bench against Chelsea. Could be. You've got Andy Carroll, much maligned, but let me tell you about Andy Carroll. He is working. I've never seen him work as hard as he's worked in the last 8 months to get back fit. And he's now stronger than I've ever seen him. And Andy could go 10 years without another injury. I mean, of course, I'm exaggerating. I don't mean a knock where he's out for a couple of weeks or a strained muscle or something. I'm talking about he could go the rest of his career now without a major injury. Absolutely no reason why not. We understand the difficulties because of his size. He's a big man, and in a way he gets different injuries to normal players. We understand him better than we've ever understood him. So there's absolutely no reason why he couldn't go on, as I say, for the rest of his career without a major injury. Now, these issues of injuries in a squad like ours, if you get lucky and you don't have 3 injuries in the same position and then end up playing one of the kids, which has happened in the past, or you play one of your well, I think that basically that's what it really means. It means that you end up playing the kids and you don't want to do that. So luck plays a part in injuries. At the moment, our luck is running good because, players are coming back rather than, we haven't heard. I mean, I went straight down into the dressing room after the Crystal Palace game, and apart from congratulating everybody, I want to know if anybody's injured. I want to know if somebody came off because they were struggling. And when even when James Collins, went down, I'm thinking, I hope he's okay, because I think it's so important. And look what you've had this at the Crystal Palace game, just to show our good luck. We had arguably our two best centre backs were injured, and yet Tompkins and James Collins were fantastic. So,
Yeah.
but if you had a third injury, that's where your bad luck kicks in, because then you would be playing one of the a centre back that possibly has never played never played in the Premier League. It would be one of the youngsters coming in. So, but next week, hopefully, all four will be fit, and you're not on the brink of worrying that you might have to bring in a young player.
Yeah. So it's great, and I think you're right. As long as we keep fit, then we can be very optimistic. I just want to move on for a moment and touch on last week. We saw the serialisation of former manager Sam Allardyce. He had a lot to sell, and we all realise he's trying to sell books, okay? And he brought up the thing about West Ham Way and deluded fans and all that, and we can take it a little bit tongue in cheek because we know he's trying to sell his book. My question to you is: are you going to update your autobiography now with the Sam Allardyce years? Is there any more to come out?
Yeah, no, I'm. It's only a month or so ago that I updated it, and don't forget, mine is not a book. Mine is my book is 10 years old now, and therefore my book is on the internet, where I can alter it almost at will. So and it's free on the internet, so I can pretty much do what I like, which is nice. But no, I'm still working on the new stadium, the chapter on the new stadium, how that all happened, and there'll be I'll pick up on a few points on Sam, but I'm not looking to sell anything.
Is there any hard feelings of what he's saying at the moment, or do you just sort of say,
no,
well...
I mean, I don't think he's really said anything detrimental to the board. He might have, he does talk about the West Ham way, and he claims that he never understood the West Ham way. And it's really, the West Ham way is more in people's hearts than it is something tangible. So it's always it's difficult for one person to understand, what's going on in the mind and in the hearts of somebody else. So I can understand why he kind of claims that that it's difficult to understand, or for Sam to say, what is the West Ham way? I know what the West Ham way is, what I feel in my heart. And sometimes you can't explain that.
Yeah, I agree, and I don't think we're ever going to see eye to eye with Sam on this issue. And we've probably given Sam enough airtime and plugs for his book anyway. But as you say, people can download your book free of charge from your website. Yeah,
and they can, there's, and of course, as I say, they can go there now, or they could go there in a year's time, and it will be different because it's forever being updated. I might spend a few days revising it, but it's always to improve it and bring it up to date. Where Sam's book will be, and indeed everybody's book, a year after they published it, it basically is old hat. But by doing it the way I'm doing it on the internet, which gives me a lot of pleasure because it's like a diary of my life, and I can correct it and adjust it and update it whenever I feel the need.
Okay, let's move on for the future. Before we get to the Olympic Stadium, let's just talk about Rush Green. Jack Sullivan recently said on Twitter, as you know, he likes to reveal these things, that we were going to keep Chadwell Heath. There were rumours that we might sell Chadwell Heath for housing and use the money to update Rush Green. It seems to be really important now. All of our main competitors, Spurs, Chelsea, Arsenal in London of 100-acre plus state-of-the-art training facilities. I know we were recently told that you've spent around 2.5 million already on Rush Green, with another further 10 million to spend. What is the situation? What is the future of Rush Green, and how will we have state-of-the-art training facilities?
The situation is the clubs that you're talking about are super wealthy clubs. You've got to, we have to understand where West Ham is. West Ham 6 years ago was on the brink of administration with £100 million of the debt. We're restructuring the whole football club. We're moving out of Upton Park and we're moving into a brand new stadium. All of these things cost money, and we have to be prudent on how we spend our money. Super wealthy clubs can do everything. They can buy players. They can build new stadiums. They can build super training facilities, and they can do it all at once, because that's what super wealth enables you to do. We're not a club like that. We're a club that inherited £100 million of the debt, very poor facilities at both Chadwell Heath and at Rush Green. But if you go to Chadwell Heath, although the office buildings aren't luxurious, the pitches are of the highest quality, which is the first thing that we did. We ensured we relayed a number of pitches at Chadwell Heath so that the actual training facility is of top quality. But what we actually did was only did enough. It's now got 3 world-class pitches. You've got drainage has been dealt with. You've got lighting that's been dealt with. Lots and lots of things have been dealt with. Have we planted roses in the gardens? No, we haven't. We've done the basics of the things that have to be done, and each year we spend money on Rush Green to improve it. It's probably, and nobody knows for sure, but the likelihood is that eventually the first team will move into Rush Green, because the facilities there in due course will be better than can be done at Chadwell Heath. So Chadwell Heath will be given over to the academy, and the first team will probably go to Rush Green. And each year we will spend money on improving the facilities, and in a few years to come, they will be as good as anybody in the Premier League.
Good. I think we look forward to that.
We think, just finish off on that, if I could say, what we've done is that the priorities have been, do we spend 5 million on putting some really nice facilities in at Chadwell Heath or at Rush Green, or do we buy another centre forward? Well, we bought a centre forward, and the year before that we bought a centre forward, and the year before that we bought a centre forward. We could have spent 15, 20 million on our facilities and got relegated. So there's your proof. That's what we do. Yeah. We're making judgments. Of course we want to improve the facility. Of course we want to have as good as anybody in the Premier League. That is our aim. Our aim is to have world-class facilities and world-class players. But can we do it all overnight? No, we can't.
Let's move on to the Olympic Stadium. It's something I feel really close to, because I was on the initial supporters advisory board, and I wrote the original report for the board from the point of view of the supporters. And there's been a lot of support. There's been one or two who've been against from the beginning, because they feel it's their home and it's local and it's very personal to them. But it's a reality now. We're moving forward. You're aware of the 14 Fans Trust that tried to get a petition for a public inquiry and failed, on the back of a BBC documentary, on the back of the Guardian. What is your view on the whole, this constant pursuit by the media for thinking it's taxpayers' money, and half the stories I read are completely wrong. As we recently did on Claret and Hugh, this stadium is going to pay for itself. Is there? Will they ever give up in their pursuit against West Ham?
I think is it not true that great stories go on and on and on, and this is a great story. If you don't tell the truth, and a lot of these articles are terribly biased, and this constant red herring of taxpayers' money, when in actual fact the opposite is true. Because if West Ham wasn't involved in becoming the anchor tenant to the Olympic Stadium would become exactly what the vast majority of other Olympic stadiums become, and that is that they become white elephants. They go into decay, they rot, they cost taxpayers millions of pounds a year just for security and keep them from being a hazard. And that was exactly what was going to happen to the Olympic Stadium. Our Olympic Stadium would have been no different to the others that went into decay. Why would there be any different? I mean, the government's plan, the previous government plan, the Labour government plan, was in actual fact to reduce the Olympic Stadium from an 80,000-seater to 25,000 seats with no roof, and 25,000 and only the ability really to hold athletics there. Well, we know we're pulling athletic stadiums down. The Sheffield Athletic Stadium, has been pulled down because it's a white elephant. It's not sustainable. We must face up to the fact we cannot delude ourselves that people we want our kids and our young people to participate in running, jumping, all forms of athletics. We want them fit, we want them well. The bottom line is, though, that apart from Olympics, nobody is interested. We watch it, and we're there for 2 weeks every 4 years. The whole world descends upon the Olympic Stadium, wherever it may be. 10 days after, it's forgotten. You can hold the World Championship of hop, skip, and jump in the Olympic Stadium, and 6 people turn up.
Yeah,
we have to face this fact. Now, in fairness to Seb Coe, he got us the Olympic Stadium. Fantastic. He got us the Olympics in 2012. He worked his socks off to get the Olympics to come to London. And he did a fantastic job, and he got the Olympics for us. But at a price. The price was that he promised the Olympic Commission that the results would be, I forget now, I think it's called Legacy. Yes, of course it's called Legacy. He promised the legacy of the Olympic Stadium is that the Olympic Stadium will remain available to athletics. That's what he promised. So they built a stadium for athletics, which we know. We know because we've seen it dozens of times around the world. When you build these stadiums, they end up, one of them's a car park. I don't know which one it is, but I'm sure you could look it up. One of the Olympic stadiums of the last 40 years is now a car park. Now, how can you promise a legacy? Now, he did promise a legacy that it would remain a venue for athletics. Okay? He can do that, and he can promise that. But as long as you understand that the taxpayer then would be involved in a for years and years and years and years to come, because to maintain that stadium under those rules would cost £4 million a year minimum. That would be the minimum cost to the taxpayer, but that would be directly to the taxpayer. Now, that's not happened. We've come along and become the anchor tenant, and arguably, you can say that we've saved this burden on the taxpayer. And don't forget, the taxpayer would have had to have paid $60 million to reduce it from a 80,000-seater stadium to 25,000 seats. So it's going to cost $60 million anyway to the taxpayer to do that. That was in the budget, that was planned, that was understood. And then it was going to cost £4 million a year forever. Along comes West Ham, and we do a deal, and that's now no longer going to be the case. Yes, it's true that they've invested in retractable seating, which they should have done before. They should have done this before. That's one of the biggest mistakes. The biggest cost is because they didn't do it when they built the stadium. They built the stadium for $500 million instead of for $600 million. If they'd have built it for $600 million, they could have done away with the $60 million contingency payment. So really, in actual fact, it would have only cost about 40 or 50 million pounds more, and they would have had a stadium for 100 years, which we've now got, which would be a multi-purpose stadium for all kinds of sports, including athletics. They didn't do that. I'm off my soapbox, by the way.
One accusation put to you in the BBC documentary, and it's one I tried to defend because I've heard from you and David Sullivan in the past, is that you're in it to sell West Ham directly after you move, or within 2 or 3 years of moving to the Olympic Stadium. Can you rebuff this?
Categorically not true. It's never been part of our plan. And at no time have we ever talked about selling the football club. We've talked about having maybe another investor come in and share the burden with us so that we can compete with Abramovich and Man City and the super clubs. But we've never ever talked about selling. It's our intention to pass on the shares in West Ham when we become too ancient to continue, but we'll pass them on to our children who have got the same passion as us.
I don't want to be morbid, but if anything happens, I know you're 79 years young, and I know I've heard you say you have a checkup from your doctor, and you're going to be around for a long time. But if anything happened to you, David, there is provision, is there, for West Ham to go on and be handed down to your family?
Of course. My 2 daughters would inherit my shares, and their passion for the football club is not dissimilar to my own, and sometimes I think their passion is greater. So that, from that point of view, from my point of view, if something happens to me, my daughters would step up to the plate. And my daughter was at Crystal Palace and couldn't contain her excitement. So I'm confident that they will carry on the same passion and have the same desires that I've had. So I've got no concern about that. You've only got to look at young Dave and Jack, whilst they're young men at the moment. They're a few years away from adulthood, and they've got their mother, for example, is a very a great source of inspiration to those 2 young men. And a very bright lady. She will ensure that they're guided in the right direction. I've got no qualms, and I want to reassure all fans that that West Ham are in a way, you could use the word dynasty. It might sound a bit highfalutin, but you've got 2 families that are powerfully supportive you've got the Gold family and you've got the Sullivan family. And it's not just David and myself. It really is two families. And those families and all the members of the family, the direct members, are passionate about this football club. They recognise that, their dads, this has been their life's ambition. And they're passionate in themselves, but they also have respect for what their fathers are trying to achieve.
Well, I don't wish either of you early retirement.
Good man.
So hopefully you're both with us.
I mean, just to add to that, we're in pretty good health. We're well looked after in terms of medical checkups and stuff. And I'd be disappointed. I would be disappointed if I'm not here for the next 10 years. I know that sounds like, well, what do 90-year-old people do? Yeah, my intention probably would be to retire by then. But my passion for the football club, if you were asking me to go and dig a trench, that's a different thing. If you're going to ask me to use my experience, my knowledge over 25 years in football and 50 years in business, I'm your man.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about the future and the Olympic Stadium. Obviously we're moving there next year. Jack Sullivan, who you just mentioned, was asked on Twitter whether we can increase capacity above the 54,000 we're going to start with. He answered cryptically yes. I know there's 66,000 seats in there. Is there an ambition to grow beyond the 54,000? I mean, by looking at all the plans for the other London clubs, we would become the largest stadium. If we found a way to go beyond 54,000, we would become the largest ground in London. Yeah. Is there plans that you can tell us about?
Well, there aren't plans because, our current plans is to get our 56,000 seater stadium full, vibrant.
Yeah.
Remember that we promised that there isn't a seat in the Olympic Stadium which is further away than Wembley. That promise is true. The sight lines for those 54,000 seats are world class, and no seat is further away from the pitch than Wembley. That's because that was the big issue. The big issue with fans early on, and our not just fans, but people that were interested in what was going on. They were claiming that they would be miles away from the pitch, and the joke was that everybody would need binoculars. That is not true. Nobody uses binoculars at Wembley.
No, I've been, and I can vouch for that.
Yeah, and you've only got to. I mean, this is authority. This is a fact. There's not one seat in the 56,000 seats that is further away than Wembley. That is a great claim, and it really should take away the concerns of fans because they had their doubts. These are now facts. Now, the other seats that are closed away, yes, they could be introduced in the future, but that is the future. The present is to ensure that we fill the stadium week in, week out on a regular basis for football being played by West Ham in the Premier League. That is our current target. There's no reason why the owners of the stadium, the LLDC, or what's it called, E20, if they were holding and I'm just making this up, but if they were holding the NFL finals or something, there's no reason why they couldn't put in an extra 16,000, taking it to, I think it's 12,000. 12,000, so you'd be 50, you'd be 66,000. That would be appropriate in the 1966. So yes, that could happen, but that's not our concern as we speak.
Where do you see us 5 years from now? You know, we're both financially and on the pitch. I know the two are very well linked, but you know, if you had a crystal ball, and I'm asking the impossible, where does the board see us 5 years from now?
I see us well established in the Olympic Stadium. I see all of the anti-stadium lobbies gone. I think they will disappear. I see West Ham United flourishing, becoming a challenger to Tottenham Hotspurs, to Arsenal in London. It's very, very difficult to talk about the Chelseas and the Manchester Cities because they have wealth which is undescribable and you know, it's serious wealth. When a club is owned by a country, it's very difficult to compete with. I'm referring to Manchester City. It's very difficult to compete on a regular basis, on a financial basis, with Manchester United, whose world, you know, their brand is just incredibly worldwide, and we all know what the world brand means in terms of income. You know, it just puts them in a different at a different level. But that's not to say that we can't compete with them on the football pitch, and that's what I would look to see for West Ham in the next 5 years. I would be very disappointed if we're not in Europe 1 year.
Will we be debt free by then? Do you think? I mean, there was a plan to go almost debt free. I know a lot of the debt has moved over to yourself and Mr. Sullivan now.
Yeah, no, absolutely debt free. There's no way that this football club can go forward until it becomes debt free, and we expect it to become debt free when we go to the Olympic Stadium. Debt free of caustic debt. What I mean by caustic debt, and that's debt to banks. We will be free of debt to banks, and because they're the you don't want to be in debt to banks or organisations that, for example, could foreclose on you if you didn't meet your requirements. But more importantly, we'll be debt free of those, and hope. And apart from the debts to David Sullivan and myself, which, you know, these debts don't have to be repaid. Can that all be? Can we skip that, Sean? This business about our debts and the bank's debts. I'm getting a bit tied up with this. I think what I can say is that we will be debt free by the time we go to the Olympic Stadium.
Okay. Thanks for that.
And I think
final.
Also, go ahead.
Go on.
No, I was only going to say.
No,
you're really wanting to know where I think we're going to be in 5 years' time. I will be disappointed if in 5 years' time that we're not competing at the very top level. I'd like to think that where we are now, you know, is I mean, at the moment, of course, we're riding high because I'd like to see this continue. I'd like to see us debt free. I'd like to see us season after season after season competing at the in the top six, and hopefully one day break into the top four. That's what I'd like to see, and that's what I'd be disappointed if we don't, because I think we're a great club. I think that, you know, it's not coincidental that the clubs at the top of the division are at the top of the table of fan base. It's not coincidental that Accrington Stanley, with 1,300 fans, are at the bottom of the table. By that, I mean I don't know what league they're in now. I just made Accrington Stanley up. No disrespect to Accrington Stanley, but I've followed them all my life because they've always been underdogs. And but there is a correlation between the fan base and position in the league. Now, we've underperformed for 50 years. We've underperformed because we are higher up the league of the fan base than our position over the last 50 years has shown. And therefore, I'm optimistic that now that fan base has got a new stadium to go to, that will generate income. I believe that the Olympic Stadium will enable us to raise more income to give us a better position in the league, and therefore I do feel that within 5 years, if not within a year, within a couple of years, we will be in the top 6 on a regular basis, and one day I think we'll get into that top 4.
Well, that's a great place to finish, because I'm sure we all share that wish, and in 5 years' time, maybe we can have you back on and we see how well we've done. I did ask one very short question at the end. I asked some light-hearted questions. Toby Fisher does say, can we invade the pitch on the last game of the season, or will we get a live ban?
I can't comment, but I'm sure that it will be a very, very nice day. Don't forget, a lot of the fans, of course, will be buying the turfs as well. So, we don't want to damage that. Otherwise, the fans will be upset about that. I'm sure it'll be a great last game at home on our final day at Upton Park.
Someone else asked, have you ever patted David Sullivan on the head, and have you ever asked Karen Brady to make you a cup of tea?
Well, I certainly I've patted David Sullivan on the back on many occasions. I've never patted him on the head. Karen Brady, I'm sure she's made me a cup of tea. I don't think I've asked her to make me a cup of tea. I've been to her house on many occasions, and yes, she has made me a cup of tea, but I've never asked her to. You don't ask royalty to make you a cup of tea.
Oh yes, she has got higher status now. And the last question is, can we go to bed now, David? I've been up since February, and that's from Jack Hobson, who says, can we go to bed now?
Certainly not.
You've got to stay up until the next transfer window. You've been a great sport, David. Thanks for being on our podcast, more than just a podcast, in association with Clarence U. Wish you all the best for the season, and hope some of your predictions come true.
Thank you, Sean. I've really enjoyed it. Thank you very much.
Bobby Moore, more than just a podcast. Bobby Moore, more than just a podcast.